today's Accelerate and Multiply show, we're going to show you how to solve the insecurity problems in your life. Our guest with us today is a TEDx speaker and is widely regarded as one of Australia's best life coaches and a leading voice globally on solving the insecurity problem. Every day he's heard by more than 750,000 people around the country on his 1 Minute Coach radio segment. Ladies and gentlemen, would you help me welcome to the show, Jamin Fraser? Mate, good to see you there again. Welcome aboard. You've just released a book, and over one weekend, you sold more than 200 copies.
Yeah.
The bear. Congratulations. Well done.
Thanks. Amazing. Obviously, a lot of work went into it. A lot of heart went into it. So to see people enjoying it and buying it, just an extraordinary experience. So the book is about solving the insecurity problem. It's called Unhindered, the 7 essential practices for overcoming insecurity. Most people think insecurity is something you just manage. I'm convinced it's a problem that can actually be solved, and that's the how-to.
Incredible. So you've written the book, and out of all the topics that you could have written on, why is this one so close to your heart?
That's a really good question. I feel like I'm ruined for anything else. I've been a coach for 10 years. I was a pastor before that. So my whole adult working life has been involved in being invited into people's world to have conversation about lasting change. And so over that time, I've really discovered the fact that when you get beneath the surface levels, symptoms and pain, the real hindrances to life are always limiting beliefs. And the deepest and most painful of those limiting beliefs are always personal insecurities. So I knew for myself, if I could work out how to eradicate insecurity, that would make a massive difference to my life. And then if I could develop the skill sets and the tools and the frameworks to help others with that, I knew that I could be useful to them too. So I just went on that deep dive and discovered a whole bunch of really interesting things that I found useful for myself, and then started road testing with people and they found very useful. And so it became an obsession, and it became the only thing that I wanted to talk about. And then as I surrendered more into that space, it felt like this is what I was born to do. Lots of people suffer greatly for not knowing how to fix this thing, and it would be very unkind for me to not pour my whole heart and soul into making tools, resources, and frameworks available for that problem.
We come from a very masculine society in Australia. We build monuments to our struggles, and oftentimes we carry a bit of that British stiff upper lip over with us, with all the convicts who have come over. Getting around that in today's society, are people open to having the conversation in their homes? Are they willing to have this conversation of insecurity amongst their peers, or is it still something that they want to keep hidden and they don't talk about it? What's happening out there? What do you see?
Well, people are insecure about being insecure. So it is a very, very vulnerable subject. In fact, when I told my business coach I was going to call my business the Insecurity Project, he said, boy, what's plan B when that doesn't work? Because no one's going to put their hand up and say, Jamin, I'm insecure. Can you come help me? So you're right. It's such a vulnerable subject. But what I'm discovering is that people suffer in silence until they see a believable plan about how this can be fixed. So I have people message me all the time to go, Jamin, stuff's resonated over the years, but I haven't known how to get into it. This is different because I can see that there is a very clear roadmap for how this can get solved. So I think with that in mind, they know how much they're suffering by not dealing with this. So to overcome a bit of that vulnerability for the sake of, massive transformation in their life, people are talking about this and finding the 7 practices a really useful way to talk about this. So I think there's more and more people having a conversation about this very important subject.
With insecurity, do the men and the women have similar insecurities? Is there a pattern that both men and women show, or is there a certain set of insecurities that show up in men more so than in the ladies? If the men were listening to this, what would be your top 3 insecurities that the men have?
They fear being weak. They fear being emotional. They fear having to ask for help. I would say that's big stuff that just is like, no, men don't do that kind of stuff. So then they just suffer in silence a lot of the time. Women are much more likely to talk about their stuff and reach out for help. But their big insecurities are often around, I think a woman's greatest challenge is not to lose herself in the word mother. So I think more women feel like it's selfish to work on themselves, are selfish to do what's right for them. They invest their life in serving others. So they are slightly different, but when we get underneath both of it, it's still this fear of being found out as inadequate. That is a universal insecurity for both male and female.
I was working with a group of business owners, and how they described it, they said, Daniel, we've been doing this job for years. We're really good at what we're doing, but our team asks us, how do we get to where you are? And they don't have an answer of how they achieve success. And in the learning curve, we look at starting as unconscious incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. And then as you start to learn, you start to move into what's called conscious incompetence, where you know that you don't know this and you're not good at it. And then the third stage of learning is the conscious competence. Okay, I know what I'm doing, and it takes me a lot of effort to do it. And then after we've repeated that for a while, we move into that unconscious competence phase where I'm getting these results like the expert, but I've got no idea of how I'm doing it. Like Michael being able to shoot 3 points from anywhere on the field, but not knowing how to teach it to somebody else. And these business owners had the same thing. They'd got that level of success, and then they were worried that they couldn't share it with somebody else. And so that insecurity of being found out. Holy shit, holy. So in the book, Unhindered, the 7 essential practices for overcoming insecurity, where does the journey start in the book?
Well, it starts by saying the problem's not the problem. So typically people try and solve problems where they see the pain show up. So they see pain in their motivation or in their finances or in their health, their relationships. And so they think it's a relationship problem or a motivation problem or an assertiveness problem or a time management problem. So the book uncovers the fact that through a whole bunch of case studies, here's what this person thought the problem was here. When we unpacked it, we discovered that, no, it was just the surface. The deepest problem is always around fear of not being good enough, fear of being found out as inadequate. So just highlighting the fact that that is an insecurity problem that we're looking to solve. That's a really important distinction, because if you just solve the surface level problems, you only ever get short-term gain, and then you're back to where you started, sometimes worse. If you want to see transformation, you have to solve the deepest level problem.
Makes sense. Now, one of the big problems in the market today, and we spoke about this offline, is that we're both hearing in a lot of businesses that there's a lack of certainty. People are having a feeling of unrealized potential, and there's a lack of motivation. So when they come to you with this problem, what do you do? What do you do about it?
Well, the big thing is an accurate diagnosis to say, first question, what problem are you most looking to solve right now? Question 2, are you sure that's actually the problem? So before, you do a workshop on how to be assertive, before we look at how to increase motivation, before you find out the keys for getting more certainty, let's make sure that that's not just the surface level problem. And it isn't. Insecurity shows up as 5 key things when it comes to business: lack of certainty, low profitability, lack of motivation, unrealized potential, and speed drop. So they are across the board. They are key points of pain for anyone who's got insecurity that's unresolved. So showing people that, they go, righto, then you're right. Then there's no point wasting time solving the surface problem. Let's solve the insecurity problem. And when you solve that problem, then the surface level problems are solved automatically as well.
You just mentioned a new word that I'm not familiar with the description of it: speed drop.
Yeah. Well, people tell me all the time, just things take so long. Like team meetings take forever. Communication is messy. You think something's been understood, but then you got to go over it 4 times. Like problems take a long time to fix. There's this idea of here's our goal, but we push out deadlines again and again and again. So everything feels so slow. There's no efficiency. It's not optimized. So people tell me that all the time in their business, and they think it's a business problem, but the problem's actually inside them, and it's showing up in all kinds of really interesting ways that's slowing down the rate of operation in their business.
Speed drop.
Mm.
There you
Like
go.
internet speed drop. It's like, everything's slowing right down. You're back to dial-up speeds, and you're trying to do business in the 21st century. So it's like you got that driving the car with the handbrake on. It's the best way to describe it.
Is in families, Aussie families, we're a tough bunch. We like to think we're pretty tough. Are these conversations had around the dinner table? Do dads sit down and say, son, we're going to talk about insecurities today? Is it happening that way?
Yeah, look, this is one of the most frequently asked questions I get. How do you help your kids or your friends or your family members not be insecure? How do you help them with insecurity? Because people see it in their family, but they don't know what to do with it. So no, I don't think these conversations are being had very well in homes at all. They were just kind of like, I don't know, how do you fix this? It's a social media problem. The kids are, there's 1,000 voices pressuring them with their self-esteem. So there's nothing I can even really do as a parent. So a lot of parents have already thrown their hands up about when they see insecurity in their kids. But it doesn't have to be like that.
I remember when I was training to become an Australian champion athlete, people would ask, do you have fear? Fear? No fear. And so we would go big, would do hard tricks. But one of the things that I learned later on, I actually had a fear of making a mistake. And so I wasn't afraid of getting hurt per se on the water, but I was afraid of making a mistake. So I'd push myself, and I wouldn't stop until I got what I wanted. But eventually, once I got what I wanted, I was so exhausted that I couldn't actually enjoy it. And so the insecurities crept in for me was that I knew I was going to get what I wanted, but I knew I'd be so exhausted and broken by the time I got it. And so the thought of having to repeat it again, I just couldn't imagine myself repeating these things. So I'd do it once, I'd achieve the result, and I'd move on to the next thing. And it's quite an interesting thing once it comes up to the surface, how you see your insecurities coming through differently. Once you start to change, like Robert Bruss says, the vernacular, once you change the way you describe it and understand it.
Yeah, it's really important. And that's a big part of Jordan Peterson's contribution to the space. He says, be precise in your speech, because things that go unnamed become monsters and consume you. So it's a big deal. And a big part of practice 1 of the 7 is to name the battle, to, Yoda, name your fear, named must your fear be, before banish it you can. So a lot of time people are using very abstract terms to describe what's wrong. They're just, I don't know, I'm just not, things aren't right, things aren't great, I don't know, I'm uneasy, I'm uncertain. It's like, hang on, what exactly are you dealing with here? Do the work around an accurate diagnosis, be precise, and understand the exact nature of this problem. Because the moment you do that, then you can direct all resources and all energy and all time and money to solving that problem. And then that's when great transformation happens.
And do you believe that somebody can truly overcome their insecurities? Or is it something that they've always got to manage?
With 100% certainty, I'm convinced this is a problem that can be solved. And I think the way that it works is you solve it at the level of growth that you're at, and then being unhindered, you'll take more territory, you'll pursue more uncertainty, and so you'll inevitably find new levels of insecurity as you grow and change. But the same 7 practices that solved it on the last level of growth will help you solve it again at this level of growth. But it is a problem that can, not only can it be solved, it must be solved. I think for the sake of the planet, it is the responsibility of every adult to overcome their insecurity, because insecurity left unaddressed leads to madness. So it affects the collective consciousness of the planet when we live in our insecurity. It's a big deal, an important one, and yes, it can be solved.
Now, on your website here, Jamin, the Insecurity Project, as I scroll right down through the bottom, there's even a test for insecurity test for business and for life. So if anybody's game, what do they have to do? They've got to head over to the website, jaminfraser.com, and what do they do then?
Yeah, well, just to click on that test, I think it's a really interesting thing to go, oh, I'm not insecure. Am I insecure? Maybe how would I know if I'm insecure? Well, there you go. There's a diagnostic, 15 questions, clever questions designed to help you explore this subject in your life. So you'll get a report at the end highlighting if insecurity is there, where is it costing you the most across the 5 key indicators of business and the 5 key indicators of life. So It's a courageous thing to do. But again, if you can see what the problem is, then you can start to solve it. You can't change what you can't see. So that tool's to help people turn the lights on and have a look around.
I love it. I remember I took it once before, and it was very accurate with what came back. But I realised that we change and we go through different periods of life. We
Of
overcome
course.
obstacles and we set up new goals, and it's time to reflect and look at it again. For the past decade, I've been using a lot of psychometrics and behavioural tests, and we always see people come in with one style of behaviour, and a couple of years after a significant emotional event, things change.
Yeah,
Somebody who
sure.
was highly emotional, intelligent 5 years ago could have been approached with a big challenge, and then their levels of emotional intelligence drop again, and they've got to solve that another problem at a different level, and they work back through it. So if if you like to self-discover and if you want to learn more about yourself, head over to the website. Now, I've put up the website below, jaminfraser.com. So get over there, take your insecurity test now for personal life or for business. Make sure you catch a copy of his latest book. But Jamin, before we go, I've got 5 questions for you. I've got 5 questions that I'm dying to ask. In life, what frustrates you the most? What is that thing that frustrates you more than anything else?
When people give advice, the internal response when everyone gives me advice is, "Don't tell me what to do. You're not my mum." I think advice is the most horrible thing in the world.
And what about your most embarrassing moment? What's your most embarrassing moment?
Oh, look, there's plenty. I'm the kind of person who plays big, takes lots of risks. So I've often put my foot in my mouth. But I think my all-time most embarrassing moment comes back to Year 6 school camp when I misunderstood the directions of a school play and ended up without any clothes on at the wrong time in the play because I hadn't followed instructions. And that's still, I replay that scene again and again. If only I'd kept my clothes on.
And what about the book? What's the one book that's had the most impact in your life?
Boy, I'm going to say The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. When I read that, I had a very physical experience reading that on a plane heading to Melbourne. It affected every cell in my body. I think it's a book of great wisdom. So that's at the top of the pops.
I love that one. Great book. And for you personally, what's the one biggest mental or emotional block that's held you back the most in your life?
Well, when I uncovered my own insecurities, my deep fear was that I wasn't one of the big boys. So I was very ambitious, naturally set lots of goals, but my internal dialogue was that I wasn't one of the big boys. So that the big boys are playing here, I'm ever going to play there. So that's been a really significant thing to work through in my own life. And to see myself change that internal dialogue, like I notice all the time, I go, look, Jamin, yeah, you're one of the big boys. Look at you go. And so it's been beautiful to see that shift in my life as I've really overcome insecurity and take my place in the world.
I love it. And one final one before we go. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with insecurity?
I wouldn't dare give advice, but I would say, look, it can be solved. Honestly, there are plenty of people in the world who have solved this problem. And all you need to solve any problem is the proven framework and someone skillful enough to hold you in that space until it works. So have a look at these 7 essential practices and see how they work for you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. All the best with the new book launch. Ladies and gentlemen, to learn more about Jamin Fraser, head over to the website, jaminfraser.com. And if you've been struggling with insecurity, make sure you take the insecurity test. Now, there's 2 there. There's one for your personal life, and there's also one for your business. Jamin, thanks for your time today. You've got to give another round of applause.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me. It was a real treat.
Always a pleasure. I'll see you soon.
Okay, bye now.